I'm Peter Meyer, and before I get to my real presentation, we have an edit-a-thon this evening. We'll be at George Washington University in a very nice room. We'll be near a lot of restaurants and bars. So it might be that a bunch of people would like to come there, leave their stuff, go out to dinner. You could also go to the Kennedy Center. There's a little bus to take a tour of that. You can walk to the National Mall from there. But for the edit-a-thon, we're going to be ordering pizza. So without any particular commitment, I would like people to raise their hand if they are going to want pizza from us tonight at George Washington University. And I really don't know if it's 10 or 30. Thank you. I have my answer. And more of you are welcome to come. We will order more if more people come. Now, I work for a couple of U.S. statistical agencies. There's one in each department, basically. There's a Bureau of Labor Statistics and of Transportation Statistics and Justice Statistics. They are in different departments. They are under different rules. And I had been wanting to use MediaWiki for my own note-taking and sharing with other people, and pushed a number of ways. There was a lot of resistance about the technology, some resistance about the idea of what could be open. And a thing that turned out to work was that we could have a wiki oriented to statistical activities, statistical agencies across the U.S. government. And EPA was able to host it. The other statistical agencies just don't run MediaWiki, basically. But we can put our definitions there, potentially some code and procedures we use. The content is not secret. It is for government use only, but we would never put data that is to be released there. It is still called a pilot project, and it is not for the government. It is not for the public, but any .gov person is welcome. So if people are interested in working together on a MediaWiki, this is a good place to share templates, share information. And I should have said, I'm not speaking for any agency or any organization today. Front page is a list of links, and this is how it looks for me. We didn't try to change the front end, but I do emphasize when I present to managers that the history of a page is recorded, which means that it is auditable where the information came from, because one of their concerns is bad information will go in there. A central reason I wanted to have one was the need for a glossary, because we have thousands of terms and abbreviations. We work on classification systems of all the industries, all the occupations, medical conditions, and each of those is a detailed thing that requires explanation, a place in a category system, alternative category systems, a lot of definitions associated with the gross domestic product, the measurement of assets, our many data sources, and new topics. And then a lot of things are administrative, having to do with all our various publications and the existence of these subunits and agencies in different places. So for example, I heard the term M1313. Somebody said that like I would know what this is. And I searched and searched and searched. I had asked for help. It turns out to refer to a particular memorandum that I'm supposed to know, which is fine now that it exists. It's a defined term. Interagency projects do not have a natural home, in a way, electronically, since within the agencies we have computer systems, networks, folders, shared sites, but an interagency project doesn't have a home. So I try to document what they are on Statipedia, since they're hard to search for. A number store their meeting notes on Statipedia, and plug here for Tom O'Neill's regular monthly discussion group for MediaWiki within the federal government. It's good if people participate in that. They're always noted on Statipedia. This is a good place for history. MediaWiki is a good platform for doing history, because you might have to define the same thing in multiple ways, slightly different definitions. It might take a lot of explanation. Things should link to one another. So the history of government statistics work, it's not that you would be interested in it every hour of every day, but we don't want it to be lost. So older documents can be up here, documents that we've had to refer to, historic censuses. How does China do a census? We should have access to that information, even if we do not often work on it. Egypt did a census in 1848. We should know this. And with info boxes and categories, we can get back to that information. I have always emphasized in presentations, or I've learned to emphasize, that the purpose of Statipedia is not administrative information, because officials think they have control of that, but rather to describe its importance in scientific content. So the first equation looks like a big mess. This is the kind of thing it takes to do a price index. You'll see it on Wikipedia because I developed it here and copied it up. We need footnotes, and the footnotes should hopefully have a link to something so we can drill into the sources, and the next person can drill into the sources. We benefit from having categories and copied templates so that, for example, national income and product accounts is a category associated with the definitions creating the GDP, and you might need to drill into that and get yourself trained on it there. And MediaWiki is not ideal for source code, but we do not have a shared source code control system, so it's possible to paste some up with examples. And I've emphasized the importance of scientific content also because it seems to me to contrast with SharePoint, which never suited the kind of work we do in research in these agencies. We have a shared calendar of events, so people can put up something associated with statistics, with data, whatever is of interest to Statipedians, they add to a list. There's a kind of internal journalism we need in the agencies because you cannot read everything. I have tried it, and it just means I have piles of paper in my office. So when we go to a conference, it's good if the conference's existence is noted on a wiki, and perhaps notes from the conference if a person is willing to share. Bibliographies also, the set of things you wish to refer to if you are writing about international price indexes. That's a specialized category of thing. We can share that, co-develop it. I think it's a great platform potentially for summaries of books and documents we should read on how regulation should work. We can't all follow that issue. We need to catch up quickly. And some of that will then later be copied to Wikipedia or some other publication, some other source where we get credit for it in the agencies. It isn't just internal. Okay, and then responses to critiques of what we do. We need an internal platform for that. Somebody says that inflation should be calculated in a different way, and it's not fair the way it's currently calculated. Now, our response could be defensive. We can also publish a response, but part of our internal brainstorming could be put it on a platform. Think of it as a kind of external threat or opportunity, something we want to respond to, and it may take time to develop, to cultivate our own understanding and response and our own way of explaining our answer. I am an economist, and I have worked on some theory about these things also, about wiki development and in general open source technology development. It's too long to explain here, but there's a recurring contrast on platforms like this having to do with their design and uses. You've already heard it probably several times today. A large wiki for lots of people has enormous benefits of scale, but a small one can focus on a team's goals and use its language and be secret. So that contrast, which I'm going to frame here as an all-government wiki, which is an ideal of mine, versus a focused knowledge pool for a team or a project. So there's one across the whole Canadian civil service, but most U.S. federal staff don't have access to a wiki, which means they don't have a way to share with their successors in this particular platform that is designed for this kind of sharing with, hyperlinks and footnotes and categories. A usability issue that brings that to your desk at your time is if somebody emails you a hyperlink, does it work? It might link to a site that you don't have access to, or that you could get access to, but it's a burden. You might have to log in, you might have to request an account, and then you're tracking more and more stuff. And so there's a complexity cost to having many wikis, many admins, many namespaces. Also maybe a security problem, or there'll be differential levels of security that aren't centrally watched and controlled. One way to communicate that, in this Venn diagram, all the little capital letters are institutions, offices. So BLS is the one I work for. BLS has important knowledge overlap with many other statistical units across the government. but it's also part of DOL, the Department of Labor. It has overlap with labor. Now, labor does have a MediaWiki we can share. Statipedia is the one for the statistical agencies to work with. Framed this way, we have different pools of knowledge, and we can copy between them if we need to. There's also a set of institutions with whom we don't have any kind of shared wiki, and that's not a thing we could, there is no right answer necessarily. That's a thing we have to address and solve and live with. Here's another way to express that. I was speaking to executives at BLS. I thought this would be more fun. BLS is a part of this brain in pink with its own subunits and many others, and if we're going to share our memory with the other units, I suggested we should have a common Statipedia sharing among them. And I was advised by my colleagues, don't use this, it creates the impression that you're telling them they don't have enough brains. And I thought, come on. I didn't mean that, but okay. So now it's the Venn diagram. A recurring issue, we've already heard it today, we'll hear it each coming day, is that a lot of what people who don't know this topic want when they talk about a wiki is a document management system. And there turns out to be a good literature on what is different about a document versus a wiki page. A document has more of a finished property, a real authorship, a real date, and a real audience. A wiki page can be very much fragmentary, multi-authored, or there's de-emphasis on who the author is. And it should be rapidly importable, exportable, reusable, and so forth. So I've tried to make a list here of what makes them different, but it's just it's a recurring issue, and I think both are needed. My work doesn't call for me to use a document management system very much. I want the wiki system, but it's unavoidable that we need document management systems in government, and they do have to have official copies of things and security levels that are not of interest in a general wiki reference work. Another difference in design and use that comes back and back is this a general reference work, or are we a little group together trying to accomplish a particular thing? So Wikipedia is the canonical reference work. It's open, descriptive, and scientific. And I have worked on when things like that arise. If we each have the goal of inventing some kind of new thing, let's say a flying machine before there were flying machines, and we go in our different directions, we have an interest, an economic interest in sharing information, but not all information, and we aren't necessarily trying to make the same thing. That's a context in which people would like a common platform for sharing. And it doesn't have to be priced. Not everything will be shared. There's a permanent tension or trade-off with private secret information. Whereas a group or team requires a different thing. They might require fine-grained security, and they might want their own project status, summary, or dashboard focused on outcomes of specific interest to them. That's really different from what a reference work does. A wiki might work for both. Others in our field, that is statistics, governance, economics, are using MediaWiki. I visited several of these and talked to their people. Eurostat, the EU statistical office, has a publication mechanism where they co-author on a wiki, then they publish the finished work on another wiki where the public can't do edits to it. I thought that was interesting. And then OECD collects input from the public through a number of public wikis. Several countries have civil service-wide wikis. I have not been able to see them very much. Many US agencies are running these. Okay. Broad goals, recurring idea, at least in my line of work, is a kind of knowledge management that I think of as efficient scientific communities. I mentioned several of the issues: drilling down, common reference points, awareness of what other people are doing, implicit peer review, and the capacity to find the specialist who edited that page, because you need a specialist on that subject, and there might not be one at your agency. There is a pattern of the agencies each hiring a specialist of their own in each topic, and that is maybe not so efficient. An idea I like a lot, which came up earlier, is that if you have a platform of information, then when you search for something, you can discover it. And it doesn't have to be disseminated in the sense of being a megabyte long email that everybody gets and then searches on their own hard drive. So I too, like the earlier speaker, would like to get to a world in which my email is not completely overwhelmed by large documents. Okay, that's science. Then there's a technology side. We can support innovation within our agencies by people we don't know if we have good platforms like this, and help them bring in innovation from outside. So innovation outside in innovation, or innovation from the bottom, or people remote from us, and learn across offices by comparing our practices and letting innovation emerge on these by copying or trading of information amongst people who don't have any prior relation. So in an ongoing way, I encourage people onto Statipedia. All of you in the U.S. government are welcome. DOL has a wiki, OECD has a wiki. All these, if we can get people to use them, they learn the right standards, the right concepts that get them into the MediaWiki world and into this information exchange space. It would be good if we could get people to count contributions to a wiki as a work achievement that is not occurring in the agencies where I am working, but I am happy to visit and demonstrate and train. Our platform is hosted at EPA, and EPA is maybe in 6 months going to unplug their support for MediaWiki, which is a kind of tragedy. So I will be exploring who else might host it. We'll archive what we have, we'll copy it to other wikis or other platforms as needed, but I think the idea will keep coming back because it is so efficient for the larger group, and I guess the host doesn't always see it as efficient. And a recurring idea is that we want to ease training and turnover by having a platform of information that people can get to. I personally think a U.S. government-wide wiki would really help our efficiency across the agencies. Statipedia has the problem that people have to log in frequently, every half hour if they're not at the central agency that's hosting it, and that has been a real burden. It's hard to get people booted up into it because their computer doesn't just start with them having access to it. So that is called the single sign-on problem, and people outside my space are working on that across the U.S. government. That's all. Thank you.